Hey everybody, Brooks from Digital Cloud Training. I want to talk you through today how you can hack the behavioral interview questions at a particular company. Here's the idea. Behavioral questions are not about the technical stuff. It's about you, how you behave, what you do, kind of like almost like your personality. They want to know what kind of employee you would be and you feel fit their culture. Now, to understand this better, let's actually dive into three. We're going to look at Microsoft, then Apple, and then the granddaddy of them all when it comes to behavioral questions, Amazon. And we're going to set you up in a way so you can hack these cultures to get yourself ready. Let's start with Microsoft. I went onto their culture page and read through a little bit. And there was something I noticed right there that I really liked. It had to do with the second paragraph, second sentence. We need to be willing to lean into uncertainty, take risks, move quickly. When we make mistakes, recognize the failure. Here's the idea. You take a statement like that, flip it around in your own mind, and then you try to figure out how would you answer a question that might sound something like this. Tell me about a time when you were doing something you've never done before. There was a lot of uncertainty about it. It could be like a sport you wanted to get into, or maybe it was working in a place where you had no experience. How did you go in there? How did you mitigate the risk? Maybe you didn't know what to do or you didn't have the right skill set. How did you recognize failure? And how did you course correct as failures occur to get you to where you wanted to be? That is a great question that a lot of companies are going to ask you. So it's not just applicable here, it's applicable in many different circumstances. Now, how you answer, I'm going to talk about that at the very end with a very specific example. So let's move on. Let's take a look at Apple and see what they might ask. With Apple, it was a little bit trickier. I couldn't quite find what they were looking for, but I did find this awesome passage from Steve Jobs' book on Forbes.com. We truly understand the needs better than any other company. And then we focus. In order to do a good job of those things we decide to do, we must eliminate all the unimportant opportunities. That's called customer obsession. That's all that is. What Steve Jobs was saying is this: figure out what the customer wants and then focus on that and that alone. Let's flip that into a question that you could ask yourself. It might sound something like this. Tell me about a time when you were working with a customer and maybe you didn't understand exactly what they needed, or they were coming to you from a competitor because they said the competitor didn't know what they were talking about. How did you figure out what the customer really needed? And then once you had determined that, how did you stay focused on that and not let other things get in the way? That is a fantastic question you should be able to answer in an interview because a lot of companies ask it. In fact, when we go to Amazon, you'll see this exact thing summed up in customer obsession. Now, before we leave Apple, there is one thing I want to point out. With any major company that you go to, oftentimes they'll have an interview tips page. Check out this one from Apple. You simply go out to apple.com/careers, and they walk you through sort of the experience of what you can expect when you go to interview at Apple. It's a really cool way, and I really like that they did this because it does give you some idea of what to expect when you get there. Now, they're not going to tell you the questions. We're hacking that right now ourselves, but it does give you at least an experience they expect you to have when you come in to ask your questions, they ask their questions, you go through the interview. Now, last, I want to talk about the leadership principles from Amazon, because if you're going to a company that doesn't have leadership principles, or you don't quite ready to do the interviews, but you want to get yourself ready for them, use the AWS Amazon leadership principles. Check them out. AWS doesn't mince words in this particular case. The leadership principles are clear and they're very clearly stated. For example, you can go right through the list. Number one, customer obsession. You see, it's not just a Microsoft thing. It's not just an Apple thing. It's not just an Amazon thing. All companies are looking for employees that are customer obsessed. In this case, that's where we find it. But if we go through, we see there's a lot that are very clearly stated, from ownership to are right a lot, insist on the highest standards, bias for action. One of the biggest ones right there you could answer for. So for example, speed matters. Decisions are reversible, do not need extensive study. Calculated risk. Think about a situation where you needed to take a bias for action. They're asking you, when have you shown a bias for action? Be able to have a story that actually explains that. Now, how do you answer the question? That's the next part. Let me explain that. When you're answering interview questions, follow the STAR method, STAR, situation, task, action, result. Now, the way you do that is like with bias for action is like, you think about a situation where you needed to do something. That's the situation. What did you need to do? That's the task. Action, what did you do? Result, what actually became of it? So for example, don't answer a question about bias for action like this. So I was working at Todd's Taco Shack, and like people would come in order number 3, and they were like, God, the taco avocado almond spread is nasty, dude. So we just took it off the menu. Oh, not like that. Instead, do it like this. Star, S-T-A-R. So like people kept coming in and ordering the number 3, but they hated the spread. So I went to Todd and I was like, dude, let's take that off the menu. He was like, no way, dude. Make it the 3.5. Oh, turns out we saved time ordering. The customer loved it. And it became the number 1 selling item at Todd's Taco Shack. Oh, that makes it clearer to the person actually interviewing you what you did. In the first example, it was just a mashup. Something about almond avocado spread, and they started laughing and we didn't know what was going on. In the second example, I was clear. There was a situation. Customers didn't like item number 3 because of the avocado spread. What did I do? I went in and I talked to Todd. We came up with a new menu item. It cut down on ordering time and the customers loved it. Became the best-selling item out there. That's an example of our answering with the STAR methodology. See how it is really tight. And that's the other thing I really want to express to you. When you're doing it that way, your interviewer is going to really like the fact that you hit it and you moved on. You explained everything, you moved on. They like it when you're succinct. When you just carry on and ramble, that's usually not a good indicator to them. And it's something you're going to want to avoid. So, wrapping it all up. 1, go do some research on the company. Find out what they like in terms of culture. See how you can answer those sorts of cultures by doing that flipping of the culture statements into questions that you ask yourself. Use the STAR method. Situation, task, action, result. And then finally, if you can't find one that really makes sense to you, drop into Amazon's leadership principles. Go through each one of these. Take every one of them. Flip around. Talk about a time when you invented and simplified. You don't understand what that means? AWS, Amazon explains it to you right here. Then be able to answer in the STAR method. Now, finally, caveat to all of this, and it comes in 2 parts. 1, as you're looking at a company's particular culture, you may find you're not a good fit. Like as you're going through looking at what they stand for, you're like, this doesn't sound like me. I don't want to be a part of this. That's a good indicator you may not have a very good time there. Now, if it's the one company that's willing to make you an offer, just know going in, there's going to be a little bit of a rub, but at least you can go in and be ready for it. So that's the first thing. The second thing is this. That's behavioral questions. If you're applying for a technical job, there's going to be technical questions, and that's where we come in at Digital Cloud Training. When it comes to technical questions, you need to have the background, and you also need to have hands-on experience. And that's something we do very, very well, particularly in our boot camps, where we take you from Linux to understanding the security, to understanding Python. We walk you through it all. Also, our on-demand content covers it in great detail to get you ready for certification exams and being able to handle technical questions and interviews. So, get yourself ready, walk through these behavioral type questions, use the leadership principles, use the core cultures as your way of figuring out what they may ask you, use the STAR methodology, and get into training so that you'll be ready for those technical questions. See you next time.